Well, hello there. Welcome to MrFrostbite.com extended version of the blog Random Access Memories. And I thought I'd take a walk out into the wonderful British countryside on a sunny day. It's beautiful out here, to speak about the wonderful British countryside and the effect that COVID and everything else that's been going on this last year has had. Because if COVID's taught us anything, it's taught us that getting outside, enjoying the fresh air, the sunshine and the wind and the rain as well, is wonderful for us as a species, as a human being, as a whatever. We enjoy the exercise, we enjoy the freedoms and mental health benefits as well. People speak a great deal about this, about how being outside and being in the open air does them the world of good. Now, of course, being in the outdoors, I think, is a privilege. And it's a privilege I think some people don't understand too well, because being in the outdoors, in the countryside at large, comes with responsibility. A lot of people will go back to the Kinder Trespass of 1932, speaking about access to the moors, access to the outdoors. And I think it's much more than that, because over these last 18 months, particularly through the pandemic, I have seen another mass trespass in my view. And it's the way that people have been wonderfully coming to see the outdoors, but the way they've treated it as well. Now, it's easy to go on the internet, get facts and figures about what's been going on over the last year or two. And lots of people will go on about land management. Who owns what? Why do they own it? And who's responsible for it? Now, Britain is quite a small island compared to most of the world, and it's very easy for people to have a go at people about, we want more access. And I've seen bits on the internet and people going on about, we want more access to more land. What you've got to remember, particularly in Britain, is it's owned. It's all owned. And though there are national parks and access, it's all owned. And a lot of that land is used for things like forestry, it's used for water catchment, and it's used for agriculture. And that's one of the biggest reasons that I want to speak about this, because I was brought up with an agricultural background. I was brought up in farming and the outdoors, and spent many happy years smelling of cow and pig muck and working with my dad at dry stone wall building and all kinds of things. So what we have to remember is when we go into the outdoors, we are on somebody else's property, and we have to treat that property well. Do we? That is the question I want to say to people, because what we've got to remember is we have an extensive footpath system in Britain, and it's wonderful. We have more than 5 times round the world in circumference as footpaths just in Britain. That's an immense figure when you think the world is nearly 25,000 miles round its circumference. We have immense amounts of access. Look at the Ordnance Survey website, look at an Ordnance Survey map. You will see how wonderful that amount of access is. And sometimes I think, do you think we've got enough already? Now, I've seen stories recently on the internet about footpaths in the Lake District going from 1 and 2 metres wide, in places up to 12 metres wide. Now that's a lot of access. That's a lot of people being out in the hills. It sounds wonderful that people are getting out, but consider what you are doing to the land. Now, I've been very fortunate for many years to travel across large parts of the world, and I've spent a lot of time in South Africa. And when I go out there, one thing I find is we have to almost pay for access. I've walked the Otter Trail, and we had to book months in advance to get tickets, because only 12 people a day are allowed on it. I wonder if you'd be prepared to do that in Britain. I've been fortunate enough to cycle the Joburg to Sea mountain bike race, and literally seen places where people are standing at wire gates to allow you access through, and when you've gone through, they lock the gates behind you. I've been to parts of Borneo where you actually have to pay for a pass, and you wear it round your neck, and if you don't have it, you will not be allowed into the area. And I wondered if you'd be prepared to do that in Britain and pay for access, and hopefully pay for repairs and maintenance. I wonder how many people would be prepared to do that. The Inca Trail now has restrictions on it due to weight of numbers. Now, I'm a Leave No Trace instructor, and I've believed in the ethics of Leave No Trace, And by the way, everything I talk about in this video will be on my blog with all the links necessary for people to log in and read. But one of the things about Leave No Trace, one of the ethics, is plan ahead and prepare. So, do we all plan ahead and prepare? Do we plan our journeys in advance? Do we think about where we're going, what it's going to be like, what people might be doing there, the weight of numbers, is it a popular attraction? And can you see? Now, this sounds quite satirical and it's not meant to be. Can you read? Because to pass a driving test in Britain, hello Mr. B, you need to be able to read a number plate at 20 metres. So, why do I get confused when people get parking tickets, particularly in my native Derbyshire, when there's a dirty great big sign saying, please do not park here, this is police enforced, and the sign is less than 2 metres away. And people still park, and then they get irritated because not only do they get a fine because it's police enforced, they also get 3 points. Read. Look at what you're doing. Oh, the sheep are coming. Look at what you're doing, because this is the important thing. If you're going to plan ahead your journey and prepare, plan it ahead. Consider when you're going. You can't see this on camera, but I can. And I'm expected to get hit at any moment. Plan your journey ahead and don't sit in a field full of sheep. Think about where you're going, what you're doing, what's the area like. It's also, of course, up to local authorities to say, if we're going to get loads of people come, how do we deal with that? Do we give better public transport, particularly better toilets, because there's more than reports of people weeing and other things at the side of roads I'm not even going to go into. Do you have the right to do that? Just imagine people turning up in your garden and doing that. Would you be happy parking in front of your gateways, weeing in your garden? Because sadly, that is what's going on in parts of the British countryside at this moment. Now, I'm a great lover of wildlife, and I've been very fortunate, very close to my house for a number of months now, to hear curlews, and they're lovely. If you've ever heard a curlew, it's the most magnificent sound there really is. They're a beautiful bird. They are protected, they are on the red list, and they are ground nesting. So why do I still see people leaving their dogs off leads when the ground nesting season is in? The number of places I go with is big signs, please do control your dogs, it's ground nesting season, not all birds sit in trees. And yet we'll let the dog off a lead. Again, do you want a dirty great big animal jumping in bed with you at any time of day or night? Perhaps you do. But it's no good when you've got something as protected and beautiful as a curlew having this trouble when we know that they're a protected species, and any species. We shouldn't be letting the dogs go mad, trample all over them. And it's sad to say, very close to where I live, there's some fields right on the edge of a housing estate, and sheep are in them quite commonly, and the rural crime teams had to come out this year once or twice because of dog worrying. Sheep are being worried by dogs. Now, dogs are lovely. I love dogs. I grew up with Springer Spaniels, mad things they are, but I love them. But you've got to remember, no matter how lovely you think it is and fluffy, it's still a wolf inside. And some dogs will be wonderful, and the odd one will just want to have a go. And sadly, if it worries a sheep, I assure you now the farmer has every right to shoot that dog, pet or not. Even the RSPCA will tell you that. And they don't like it, the farmers don't like it, the dog owners don't like it. So please be responsible. If you're going to take a dog into the outdoors, take it on a lead. Be responsible. Don't walk all over the ground where you know you're not supposed to. There's plenty of public footpaths. Not all of them are well signposted, I will agree. But learn to read a map and go out with your dogs and your pets and enjoy the countryside. I've seen so many signs come up just lately on gates with private land keep out. And I don't think it's people being nasty. They're just tired of the amount of people coming into the countryside with a pet that they just don't control properly. And that's horrible for everybody, and nobody needs that. Sheep farming, of course, as if these things ever come and eat me alive, as they probably will, has changed the world, particularly in Britain. The way that sheep have grazed the land, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, no matter what you think on this, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. But sheep farming is a huge part of particularly upland Britain, and the way that the lakes and parts of Derbyshire and many other places look is down to sheep farming. Now, as I say, there are lots of ideas when it comes to the good and bad of that. But what we've got to remember is that farmers aren't all rich. People have this perception in their head that farmers have got millions of pounds, and I don't know where they get that idea from. Let me give you an example. I, like everybody's, on Twitter, and I saw a tweet the other week of a lady who had her flock shorn, and she got 215 kilos of wool. That's a lot of wool. I mean, that's nearly a quarter of a ton. And she got £5.22 for it. So for everybody who goes on incessantly about we ought to wear more wool, we ought to be more environmentally friendly, stop wearing plastics and polyesters and all the rest of it, I completely agree. But do you think the farmers deserve a little bit more than that? Because if you do your calculations, what some farmers are making in money from a sheep farm is less than a family will get on benefit. And I found that quite amazing to see. I couldn't believe it. Sadly, it is absolutely the truth. So we have to consider these people because this is their land. Do we have a right to leave gates open, let dogs chase them? It's a rare occurrence, but it happens, and we can't allow it to happen. I close every gate behind me. I always have and I always will, and still I find them wide open in all kinds of places. Leave no trace, as I say, is part of what I do, and littering has become, sadly, a major problem. We live in a world of plastic. Again, I'm not going to go into the ethics of that, but the fact is that it's getting out of control in places. I have friends who live in Bradforddale in the Peak District, a very, very beautiful and heavily walked area, absolutely fabulous, and this summer it's been horrific. And people from the local villages in Yorgrave and such have been going down collecting the litter because they're just sick of it. Now, it doesn't take much to think that you can put it in your rucksack, put it in a bag, you carried it in. Every house in Britain has recycling facilities and a bin at home. So why can't people use them? It's not hard. I'm not asking people to take a degree in rocket science. This is pretty simple. It's a bit like we had a lot of moorland fires earlier in the year in the Peak District through disposable barbecues. And there's been a really good drive to try and stop people bringing them onto the moors. You know, I'm not trying to ban everything, quite the opposite. I want people to enjoy the countryside, but please don't destroy it. And a lot of the shops now in the Peak will not sell the disposable barbecues, but again, it doesn't stop people bringing them in. You know, we can't stop everything. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, but we've got to stop thinking that the countryside is a festival. And when I say that, I can remember seeing an aerial photograph of the Reading Festival about 8 to 10 years ago when everybody had left and you couldn't see the ground for plastic tents, whatever. And I've worked right next to the Download Festival at Castle Donington. And again, I've seen the amount of waste left behind. I work in the electricity industry as much as anything else. You know, we've had to switch overhead lines off because of the amount of rubbish thrown at them, and metal balloons, all the rest of it. People have got to be respectful of where they are, and we've got to remember that this will come with a consequence. You know, if you keep going and wasting places and destroying places, people will start shutting things down or closing things down, and people that go wild camping, in very inverted commas, and leave waste everywhere because this stuff hits the internet regularly. And this is the problem. For every 99, 100 people that go out and have a lovely time, there's always going to be one or two do something crazy, which makes the headlines. And that's the world as it is. And it's tragic. I don't want people to not come into the countryside. I want people to enjoy it. I want people to be out in it, love it, and enjoy themselves, get fit, because loads of people have put weight on over COVID. I've put a bit on myself. We need to go out and exercise, get the fresh air, and enjoy the countryside. And I'm not trying to be grumpy either, and I'm sure some people think I am. I am not. Quite the opposite. I want people to embrace it, but I want people to respect it. Because what you've got to remember is this: we should never, ever, ever destroy something that includes our countryside and many other things by basically loving them to death. And if we're not careful, we might do that. So, thank you for listening. As I say, everything is in the typed blog with all the necessary links. Please do comment and send me questions, and have a wonderful time wherever you are. Enjoy the countryside, but enjoy it responsibly. What? Is it warm? Is it warm? Oh, you great daft devils. It's not as warm for me, but it's warm for you. What are you doing?
You haven't got a woolly jumper on.
You've not got a woolly jumper on, ever. And you've been shorn. Very nice nose. Go on with you. You smell worse than I do. Do you?